should we do with a drunken sailor? What should we do with a drunken sailor? What should we do with a drunken sailor early in the morning? Pull it up, you pilot, pull it up, you pilot, pull it up, you pilot, early in the morning. Put him in the long boat until he's over, put him in the long boat until he's over, put him in the long boat until he's over, early in the morning.
Hello. Welcome
Hi,
to
everyone.
our fourth episode of Pragmatic Humanist podcast with me, Vitaly Sharavatov, and Pasha.
Hi, folks. Happy that you see me again.
Yes, I'm happy to see you too. And yes, we had 10 month break from our podcast?
Yeah,
or
something
even
like
more?
that. It was a
10
moving
months.
time.
Oh yes, as the Chinese have this saying, when they want someone to suffer, you need to live in the changing times, right?
Yeah, in times of changes. Right.
So yes, our today's topic, yes, in times of changes, our today's topic is professional ethics. For the last few years during consultancy and mentoring, I've thought a lot about the ethics of what I'm doing as a developer or as a manager or as a consultant or as a mentor or tutor. And that's why we decided to talk about it with Pasha.
Yeah, true. I mean, ethics is
Yeah.
a very interesting topic. It's very wide, so let's see where it will lead us. But I actually
Mhm.
can discuss any aspect of ethics, I believe. And I also think that I have strong opinion on ethics, but we'll hit it a little bit later.
Yeah, sure. So first, let's define what ethics is. According to the dictionary, ethics is a set of principles or guidelines which target or guide our behavior as professionals or as members of the society. So this dialogue is about professional ethics. But first, I would like to discuss more the very principle of ethics, the very core of ethics. So for me, it's just like, in Bible, for those who believe in Christian God in Bible, they have 10 commandments. They have some other very basic rules which should govern their behavior. It's not laws. It's not even rules. It's like guidelines. Do you have some guidelines in your life that govern your behavior?
I believe yes. I would rather call it not guidelines, but framework maybe, because it's a framework of how I make decisions. And usually I tend to call it ethics, my own personal ethics. It's not a set of rules. It's more like a set of ideas and set of basic principles based on which I try to make the best possible solutions. And when I say the best possible, I mean some balance between outcomes for me, outcomes for society, outcomes for colleagues, outcomes for mentees, for everybody involved, actually. And I would say my philosophy, it's like philosophy, it's more or less close to utilitarian philosophy. Always choose something with the lowest level of harm to other people. Utilitarian philosophy has one huge flaw. We cannot predict all the outcomes of our doings. It's a big issue. I can do something innocent today that will have an awful outcomes 2 years later. So I'm trying to estimate possible outcomes, and also I'm a little bit further from utilitarian philosophy because I'm trying for my doings be useful or at least not harmful for me too. Because extreme utilitarian philosophy is always about the best possible outcomes for society and not about the subject at all. And when I say subject, I mean me.
So it means that the extreme utilitarianism sometimes demands sacrifice, personal sacrifice. So you can
and that's fine.
sacrifice
I'm
yourself.
fine with some level of sacrifice, but I would prefer to keep my life as long as it's possible, at least. for example, and I would prefer not to suffer any significant physical damage, maybe
I would
psychological
say,
damage too.
you know what? I would say that your point of view is still within the utilitarianism, because if you stated that if you are happy and if you're well off, if you are healthy and happy, you can do more good for the society.
Theoretically, but again, we can't
Yes.
predict outcomes of all our doings on the one hand, and
Mhm.
it means that sometimes I make suboptimal choices from the point of view of the society, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
maybe I could do more if I would sacrifice
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah.
And
I,
if all
mhm.
people would behave this way, I believe it will be the perfect outcome for the whole humanity.
Mhm.
But currently, it's not the case.
So it is, you're following Kant's categorical imperative, where the maxima is that you want everyone to behave the way you behave to everyone.
I
You
actually
want it to be the best.
don't believe in categorical imperative at all. Well, I
Mm.
mean, the idea is nice, the formulation is
Mhm.
good, but
Mhm.
there are so big outliers that I stopped believing it.
Mhm.
For example, Hitler
Mhm.
didn't ever get anything comparable to what he did to other people, so it just
Yeah,
doesn't
true.
work. It
Mhm.
and it. I believe there are many such cases. They're not that
Mhm.
significant as in World War II, Holocaust, and so on,
Mhm.
but it's a very sensible topic. But
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
I believe that we should do the best what we can for society without significant harm to ourselves. It's not
I
about
follow the same principle. Yeah.
I don't really think that society will give it back. Not today, not tomorrow at least. No,
You know
probably
what? It's
not
very
during my
interesting.
life.
I I fully agree. I have pretty much the same attitudes and the same ethical code. And I would say that for me, giving something to the society, um, without sacrificing myself much, is a choice and is a call. I would say. I just want to do that. It's not for me to get some benefit back from the society. It's just that I want this to be done. I have my passion. I have my heart. I have my will, so I can use it to the better state of the society. But what's very interesting, what you said, that you said you want the society to become better place, and this better is very subjective. This is what I
Totally.
love in ethics, is that ethics is purely subjective stuff. And that's the argument, or rather counter argument, that I get sometimes from people. Why do you need to think of ethics if it's such a subjective matter? Mm, to me, it's still very useful to think about it, because if I reflect upon my ethics, if you reflect upon my ethics, it's very easy for us to synchronize them, not to agree on it necessarily, but to synchronize. So if I know, let's say, Baruch, and he is a libertarian, and I understand his ethics, it's much easier for me to argue with him, to reason with him, to communicate with him, because we
But on
both
the other
know our
hand,
ethics.
you lose any ability to argue with him, because when you don't know what is in the mind of other person, you
Mhm.
can make arguments in any way you would prefer, and you would act based on your values.
But
When you
you know,
know when you know some location of some person
mhm,
on some scale, like
mhm,
when we say that somebody is very libertarian,
mhm,
we already have some stereotypes, and we will try to find arguments according to these stereotypes, and
mhm,
they probably won't work, because if we are not on the same side of the scale,
mhm.
person just won't understand us, and then the whole argument doesn't make any sense.
That's interesting. I would agree and disagree. Uh, to me, this looks like the concept of a mental set. So pretty much every professional has this, almost a bias, right? That if I am a manager, I perceive everything from my managerial standpoint. If I am a developer, I perceive pretty much any problem as a developer. So I would agree here with your thesis that knowing someone's ethical code means that you might be biased. But I, like, personally, maybe it's just an anecdotal evidence, but personally, I would say that for me, it's much better to know what person thinks is ethical, so that I can empathize and stand into their shoes and then talk from that point of view.
There is saying that you should always speak in language of on a person's language. I
Mhm,
believe it's true,
mhm,
in some sense at least.
mhm.
My fear here is we are biased from the very beginning
Yeah.
when we know something about a person, and even when we try to fit their shoes,
Mhm,
wear their shoes, and to speak their language,
mhm,
we still somewhere internally have this idea that I'm right, and they're wrong.
mm,
And it, first of all, I'm not sure if we will ever complete the argument. Like,
mhm,
will this argument have any outcome? I'm not
mhm.
sure, because probably the language is so different that we won't ever understand each other.
That is
Second,
possible.
and I see it usually. I see it that people just don't finish their arguments.
Mhm.
It becomes unconstructive or even destructive, and they stop arguing. It makes sense, like, as a human-oriented solution, but it doesn't make sense in terms of we shouldn't even start argument when we are not ready to finish it, I believe.
That
The
is
second
true.
thing is, the second thing is, as I said, when we try to wear other person's shoes, it doesn't mean that we really understand it. We understand it intellectually, but
Mhm.
do we have the same mindset?
No, of
Does
course not.
does this mindset influence our whole life to
Mhm,
make some conclusions?
mhm.
And so would we be able to understand this person really, not only intellectually but
Feel him.
empathically and
Mhm.
emotionally? I'm
I,
not sure, and
I would
maybe
say
no.
that's kind of two different issues here. So
Totally.
there are studies saying that when psychologists in the US were trying to fight bigotry, when they tried to not fight, overcome alienation, let's say, to LGBT people, which
Mhm.
some members of their society still possess, they said the only way to connect to those people was to actually empathize with them, try to understand what drives that hatred, try to understand, maybe they were bullied or something, like, but trying to understand what drove those people who they are perceiving as bigots to that state of mind. So I would say that understanding someone means that, well, at least their ethical code means that you can potentially communicate better. Maybe you won't communicate better, but you can. That's my point of view.
uh, I agree on this, and I
Hmm.
think that it's a huge
Oh, yeah.
mistake to think this way at the same time,
Mm.
because look, it will be a nice mental trick,
Hmm.
intellectual trick. I know i know what Vitaly is thinking about, and I can understand him,
Mm.
so I will be able to make arguments that Vitaly will understand and will accept.
Uh-huh.
and then
Uh-huh.
and then it happens that in reality I don't understand Vitaly. I know
Mm.
nothing about Vitaly actually,
Mhm.
but I don't know, some positioning on some scale. My arguments don't make any sense for him.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
thinks that I say some nonsense,
Mhm.
and I don't even feel it, because I made myself think that
Mhm.
Vitaly understands me because I
Mhm.
understand him so good.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very interesting. So this drives us to um, different viewpoints. But let's come back to professional ethics. So
Totally.
let me tell you a simple, very little story. Whenever a company, any company, comes to me and asks for consultancy for their engineering managers or CTOs, if I find out that this company works in, let's say, gambling or microfinance or drugs or selling arms. Well, these didn't come to me, but if they did, I would still refuse them. So I always refuse. I say, well, sorry, folks, I do not want to have anything in common with you whatsoever. And the reason for that is that I have developed my own very simple ethical code that I want the society, as we discussed with you, I want the society around me to become a better place. I personally, subjectively, of course, it's just a belief. I personally believe that helping companies become more successful makes them affect the society more. And so if I help a company which sells drugs, I think that I make the society worse. So this very simple ethical code helps me spend my efforts on those companies and those changes in the society, potential changes that I think are for the best of the society. Do you have something in common?
But look, sometimes it can stop a dialogue between us because I think that drugs are not something bad. Yeah, I read Brave New World, but I don't really understand why people think that it's so bad, because everybody in the Brave New World, we are very happy. And that
Pasha,
is,
I'm not trying to say that drugs are bad or gambling is bad or microfinancing is bad.
I
I'm
know.
just
You say
saying.
that you're saying that you don't want to have anything in common
Yeah.
with people who sell drugs. Yeah, I don't understand it. But what if my point of view is different? Can we
Yeah,
really
of course.
discuss something here?
No,
I'm not
I'm not
sure.
trying. I'm not trying to discuss a universality of ethics. No, not at all. What I am saying is that the main point here for me is that I want to be happy. I want my society to be better. These are just my feelings. So for me to have eudaimonia, to have this happy state of mind, I want to spend all my efforts on something that I believe is good. And this makes me, this reinforces my ethical code. So I know my ethical code won't match yours, won't match many others. But I'm just saying that I think it's beneficial for me and for others to develop their own ethical code, to be
Nice,
more conscious of
nice.
choices.
What happens when people have opposing ethical codes?
Oh, we can always discuss it. It's going to be lengthy. It won't fit in 1 hour that we planned for this podcast, that's for sure. But people can argue about it and can discuss it. That's why democracy works in a way that not 100% people will agree on something, but they will still collaborate, right? There is voting that's saying that, well, in the very simplest form, if 60, let's say, percent vote for something, well, everyone will follow the laws that they agreed on.
It's an issue.
Yeah.
It's a huge ethical issue that democracy works in a way that stops people from being happy. And I mean, when 60% of people are happy, probably 40% are not happy. And it's an
True.
awful outcome. Awful outcome. And this leads us to very complex political systems without states and authorities, because hypothetically only in such states, only in such world, people can be happy, because they can gather a commune or something like that, where everybody agree on something. But it leads us to the next problem. This world will be inhumane and extremely libertarian, and it's not close to me. It's not close, and I believe it's not what's right
And it's
from
not sustainable.
my point of view,
Yeah,
because
I agree.
many problems will become unsolved. Like my community doesn't like your community, and I have doctor, I don't know, surgeon,
Yeah.
but he won't help your community's member
Yeah.
because we don't like you.
We
We are
will
not
degrade.
agreeing on something.
Yeah. Yeah. We will degrade, I would say.
Yes. So there are no good outcomes and no good ethical codes, and probably the best way to solve things, is not to have an ethical code at all. like because
Mhm.
our ethics brings disruption in our communications. Probably we should only be led by laws and rules.
Uh, I would say that is not technically possible, I think, because every
Because we are
law,
people.
we're people, yes, and every law is subjectively treated and subjectively perceived, even by um, juries and even by courts. So I don't think that complete fairness is just achievable. But here I want to focus on something much, much smaller, on things which I think and I believe can help people, just normal people, just us developers or managers, whoever, live a happier life. So once again, for me, following my developed ethical code makes me happier because I feel that I'm spending my effort on people I love, on companies I feel are doing a good job. Like we briefly discussed with you this topic that both Uber and Airbnb, they disrupted the markets severely. There were riots against Uber in London, in France, in other places. I can't remember the numbers, but I thought it was around 50,000 taxi drivers were very abruptly, like in a short period of time, out of business
I
by
believe
Uber.
my strong belief is it's not an Uber's fault and not Airbnb's fault. I
Mhm,
believe it's the taxi drivers who were extremely greedy and who were extremely gatekeepy, should I
mhm,
say. They
mhm.
were not agree that other people can work
Mhm.
cheaper than they. I
Yeah,
mean, there is no real reason for me to pay £100 to take a ride from Heathrow to my hotel in London,
I
but
fully
it's
agree.
what classical cab will cost me.
Mhm.
No
Uh,
real reason. Uber
yeah,
is much cheaper.
that is true. But once again, what I'm saying here is that I feel that people should think what their actions can, as you say, you are shit, a utilitarian, and you want to estimate what your actions would result in. So
Yeah,
I
I
feel that
believe that.
this is the same thing here. That if you are following some developed ethical code, you are like having this north star of what your actions should look like.
Yeah, and I would say that Uber is beneficial for millions and billions of people, and
Hmm.
50,000 is nothing compared to them.
Maybe.
It's maybe it's like 5% of
Hmm.
people who benefited eventually. And
Yeah.
also, I should say that classical taxi driving didn't go anywhere in London. If you
Hmm.
want some level of service, you still can. Sorry,
Hmm.
you still can call a cab or any other classical taxi,
Hmm.
but there are many other people who really
Yeah.
need a
Cheaper
cheaper
taxi.
option
Hmm.
for to preserve their safety, for example, and
Hmm.
Uber solves this issue.
Hmm.
And the same goes for Airbnb. I do
Hmm.
understand that hotels are very gatekeeper, but look
Hmm.
at me. I have 3 children.
Yeah.
When I travel with them, I need to find a suitable accommodation where we can live all together.
Hmm.
I don't want to live in 3 different rooms. I
Yeah.
mean, completely separate rooms in a hotel.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Airbnb really solves this problem for me because I can rent an apartment,
Yeah.
probably fully equipped apartment with I don't know, with anything, washing
Hmm.
machine,
Yeah.
um, dryer, you name it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody before Airbnb even thought about providing this service.
Yeah.
Airbnb just did it. It's a great good for people.
Hmm.
And still, if I need a service level of hotel, I will book a hotel.
Hmm.
Booking.com didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Booking.com is still successful, I believe.
So for you, um, helping Uber and Airbnb would be an ethical thing to do, right?
Absolutely.
That's super cool. So that's my opinion. That's my message of this dialogue that I want channel, that I think that if people think like you just described, what you think is a benefit of Uber and Airbnb, if people think of it, then when they work for a company, they can say, I am proud of the work I am doing because I feel it is ethical, it is good, it is better for the society. I can tell my mom, I work in such and such company, we're doing such a good job, we're helping this and that. Even if it is B2B, we're helping huge and I feel it's ethical. We help huge companies to do something. And there are quite a few studies saying that happy people live longer and more productive. So it's just better for everyone and spend less on psychotherapy.
Yeah, sure. But there is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we as society think that gambling is something bad. I'm not convinced, but just for the sake of argument. And then I come to my mom and say, hey, mom, I work for this huge gambling company. And my mom just condemns me because she thinks it's unethical. I'm proud, but now she breaks everything with her opinion.
But I think
Just makes
it's a
everything
universal
worse.
problem of fathers and kids.
Oh,
We have the
wait.
same with
Yeah.
no, hold on. We have the same with LGBT, right? If a person does coming out in Russia, that person will
Absolutely.
still have problems with their parents.
Totally.
So it's I
Okay.
wouldn't say it's a matter of that person having
Okay.
an ethical code or not.
Let's say let's talk not about parents. Let's talk about peers. There is such a problem on our market. If you work at video streaming service at Pornhub, you usually can't say it to your peers because they think that working for the Pornhub is unethical. It's a huge issue.
Yeah, but do they
Because
say it consciously or do they just reject because it's something bad? I would say that if people had ethical codes and reflected upon them, they could then have a proper dialogue.
no,
Why?
they have this idea that working for, I don't know, porn
Porn
scissors
industry.
company is something bad. It's part of their ethical code, and they don't want even to discuss it because you are involved in something unethical. Like some people think that selling drugs is bad, and they just nothing to discuss here. When I have this strong opinion, there is no more room for discussion. It's a huge issue with strong opinions, and this is a huge issue with ethics at all. Because when we have law and rules, everything is discussable there until the court will make a verdict, will make a decision. Everything is in law is discussable. You kill somebody, okay, let's discuss. Maybe it's some fine, maybe it's for life prison sentence. We don't know until we know everything. It's all discussable. We don't know if you killed somebody, okay, ethics kills people. Like
I would say,
if your friends will think that you killed somebody, they will stop being your friends. Really, this moment.
but I wouldn't say, no, I would even say that being able to discuss something has nothing to do with ethics per se. I would say that developing ethical code for yourself consciously is one thing. And if you actually develop it consciously, and if you actually think about it, if you try to rationalize why you think, let's say, a gambling company is a bad company for the society, then being presented with counter arguments, maybe you can change your mind because you have thought of it. You did something consciously rather than just subconsciously choose something.
I believe that laws flow from the ethics, from some collective ethics. Like people in Russia generally say that gambling harms, and that's why we still allow people to gamble, but in 3 very dedicated territories, like it happens in US, like, I don't know, Atlantic City, Las Vegas,
Access.
several reservations, and sea. That's all. That's everybody. That's all where you are allowed to gamble. We have probably something close in Russia, and this is how ethics should work. It should not be just words. It should lead to some laws and rules. Otherwise, it's just a disrupting factor probably in communication with people, because people make hard decisions
Mhm.
based on strong opinions.
Okay,
And it's
so
very interesting. I mean, currently I'm in the role of some devil's advocate,
no.
because I genuinely love cancel culture, for example, and
Mhm.
cancel culture is all about ethics, all
Yeah.
about ethics.
Mhm. What? There is a good example in my head now that we are talking about very broad implementation of ethics, societal ethics. But I wanted to say something about. I wanted to start with the societal ethics and come to professional ethics. So let's take this mass layoffs example that happened and is still happening in the industry right now. According to the management science and according to many studies that I've read, firing a person and then replacing the person costs like a significant amount of money to the company.
Yeah,
There was even one study saying that it takes more than a year for the team morale to go back to the normal
to
level
recover.
after they lay
Right.
off, to recover, yes. And there are multiple studies of the effect of firing someone, of the effect on quality, even in manufacturing facilities where you're not producing software, which heavily depends on your state of mind, right? If you're in good mood or in bad mood. And so, from the management perspective, firing such a significant amount of people is, I would say, detrimental to the company, but there is no law and there is no possible regulation within the company um, saying that you shouldn't do that. It's just a matter of people knowing, managers knowing that this is not beneficial at all, or managers having ethics, certain ethics that they're responsible for them, for the people they hired to a certain degree, that they should be good mentors and good managers and good bosses or whatever you call them. So I would say that in the absence of even in the possibility of laws, because management science is a multidisciplinary area of research, so there can be pretty much no laws. There is just effects of certain things witnessed by some people in some scenarios. You can't even reproduce a certain experiment. You can't do an experiment. So with the absence of laws, I think ethics can be quite a good tool for employees and managers to synchronize upon. What do you think?
I think what you're talking about is not ethics. It's more of a corporate culture. It's
Well, ethics is a
It's
part
an
of
object of
culture.
my higher education.
Hmm.
There is such a thing as mythology,
Yeah.
not and in
Hmm.
company, and
Hmm.
and all other parts, mission
Hmm.
and so on,
Yeah.
and values. Values are very important.
But values are
But
part of ethics.
no, you can be not agree with values.
Hmm.
That's fine until
Hmm.
you follow them.
But
Um, it's an important part. Like, let's say we have an ownership as
as a
one of the
value.
values of our
Hmm.
company.
Hmm.
Ownership, like you're responsible for products
What you take.
you're working it on and the products you're related to,
Hmm.
but you're not related for people. This can lead to very interesting outcomes. Everybody will follow this value and will try
Hmm.
to make the product better, but
Hmm.
at the same time they can stop thinking about other people. They can have toxic code reviews, they
Right.
can
Right.
make discriminatory comments and so on,
Hmm. Hmm.
because it's not a part of ethics and it's not a part of values. So I believe, and again, that's what I say all the time, laws and rules should flow from ethics. If you are a first employee of your company, you
Hmm.
are the first owner, you should
Hmm.
write down your ethical code
Yep.
and make it a cornerstone for hiring other people. Probably
Hmm.
you should clarify it. of course, your first hires will be intuitive. It's like it's a family study of organizational development. So you will just hire people who you like and who agree with you, and that's fine. Most probably, you will have many common parts of your vision.
Yeah.
But with your company growth, after say 100 or 200 of first people,
Hires.
oh yeah, to 100 or 200 of hires, it will become difficult. You won't control the hiring process yourself anymore. You will have hiring managers, HR, and so on. People will hire people that they like, not you like.
Yeah.
And it will create a bigger delta with you. And eventually it can break your vision. And it means, and that's why you should have these values from the very beginning. And these values is not about ethics. People can follow values even if they don't share your ethics, actually.
Agreed. And that's what I think. That's what I'm saying. That values, they describe what you value. Well, essentially, what you value, right? Ownership, let's say. But then ethics is like a guideline. So you can combine pretty much medical ethics, do no harm, as Google had this slogan, don't be evil, right? You can combine
many years ago.
yes, of course, you can combine do no harm and ownership, and that conjunction that will bring you better understanding what to do in certain cases. And what's even more important for me here is that ethics are it's like they guide you before you do something. Laws, they punish you for not doing for having done something.
I would distinguish a law and code. Code says how you will be punished if you will break something. Law says what you should do, actually. And constitution in those countries who have constitution is law but not code. It says that, I don't know, we have a freedom of will, for example, but it doesn't say what will happen if you will break somebody's freedom of will.
Yeah, but are you objecting are you objecting to saying that ethics? So you're saying ethics is not needed at all as professional ethics, or?
Yes, I say that ethics could be seen as an unneeded construct. We need more clearer things than ethics itself.
Right.
We need values and we need rules.
I see a point. So this is another thing that, well, like maybe that's one of the reasons why I developed my personal ethical code. So if a company approaches me and says, Vitaly, please come help us do some consultancy, and I see that during the audit phase, I see that their managers are bad people, let's say, that I severely dislike them for my ethical reasons, due to my ethical reasons. They are fining someone, doing some other crazy stuff that I think is completely out of sync with my reality, my ethics. So I tell them, well, sorry, I do not feel that I will be performant in your case, because I feel that I have not enough time to reteach you or to teach you or to explain to you all this stuff. So we're so out of sync that it would take me ages to help you. Go pay someone else. I'm not going to be of help. So for me, that is a way to influence a company or a community. Like in Russia, I had this talk on firing law. It helped quite a significant amount of people. So I just gave the information. It did no benefit to me. Well, no, actually it did. After all, I got more popular in our IT. But still, I just did it because I felt it was the right thing to do, having seen so many companies abusing developers when firing. So what I'm saying, ethics for me is another conscious way of influencing companies. And I think
agree on you here. Agree with you here. Totally. I think that internal ethics are useful. It's just not something we should demonstrate, probably. And I would say that, designers usually have their own rules, how and on which conditions they will interact with employers. especially how do you call it? Freelance designers.
Yeah.
Should you pay before, or should you pay
Yeah.
after, or should you pay 50% before, something like
Mhm.
that? How much you can control their creativity and so on.
Yeah. Mhm.
But again, it's what you could call ethics. I would call it rules again, and it would be simpler not to call it ethics, but call it rules of communications. Write it somewhere down in public place, and pointed it to everybody who approach you for consultancy or anything. I do
It
not
is.
work with people who do this and that.
Mhm.
I strongly believe in this and that, and if you don't
Mhm.
believe, probably we shouldn't work together, and so on.
Maybe it's a good thing to have. I'm actually thinking about it now. I think, yeah, some of the things I have in my mind that I explain to people, I think you're right. They can be coded. It's not going to be a law of any sort, right? It's just going to be a
Yeah, it's
manual
not
of
even a code.
how to use Vitaly, how
Yeah,
to approach Vitaly. Yeah, that's
yeah.
actually a good idea.
It's like,
Code of conduct on the
yeah,
conferences.
I would call it a very low, very high level sieve.
Hmm.
It's not even code, because you do not punish
Yeah.
anybody.
Hmm.
You just
Hmm.
don't work. It's not a punishment.
Yeah.
It's your right to not
Hmm.
work
To
with
associate with
somebody
someone.
who
Yeah.
don't, yeah,
Oh
to
yeah,
not
it's
associate with
actually
somebody.
very funny. Like a couple of weeks ago, 1 week ago, someone, can't remember who, approached me to give a talk at a place where Kazulia gave a talk. And I
Mhm.
personally dislike Kazulia for certain reasons. I don't want to discuss it. So I said, no, sorry, I can't do that. I feel that my reputation will be much worse if I
Much damage, yeah.
yeah, damaged if I mm, work in the same place where he worked in a certain way, just giving a talk. But
Mhm.
anyway, so yeah, I think that having code of conduct almost for me would be beneficial. Yeah, it's like, I once read that Linus Torvald, I think it was him, he said that if you invite me to give a talk at a conference, don't give me a hotel, I will sleep at the conference hall. So he's no, it wasn't Linus.
It's
Sorry, it
more
was
like Richard Stallman, actually.
Stallman. Yes, it was Stallman. Yes, he said I will sleep in the conference at the conference hall on my mat.
Well, his rider is quite big. He has he has a lot of
Demands.
I just saw his rider. It's
Oh,
like if it's 5 pages of conditions. One of
wow.
them is, I would prefer to not have a hotel booked for me. I
Hmm.
would rather prefer to sleep at some this location. It
Okay.
would be nice if they have a
Hmm.
parrot, but it's not obligatory. But there are,
Wow. Okay.
I'm not joking. It's a real thing.
Wow.
Eventually, sometimes he sleeps, and I don't know, on the central station of the city or something like that. It's
Hmm.
his right,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Hmm.
yes, he has its limitations. And if
Hmm.
you are not agree, you are not agree.
Yeah.
It saves lots of time for
Yeah.
all of you.
Hmm.
Some could say that Richard Stallman is weird,
Yeah. But it's
but
his
I
right.
don't.
It's his right. Seriously, I
Yeah,
can't
it's his right.
object at
Yeah,
all.
he probably he did some bad things in his past
Mm.
regarding women and
Mm.
bad jokes and so
Okay.
on.
Uh-huh.
And you have every right not to
Hmm.
associate with Richard Stallman. I can
Hmm.
understand and accept it, but
Hmm.
I would not call it ethics. I will call it code of usage. I
Conduct.
don't know.
Hmm.
Just conditions. Rider
Hmm.
is the good word, actually. Rider
Hmm.
defines everything here.
Hmm.
But a
Hmm.
rider usually is about you visiting some other place. You have a rider.
But do you think that everything that you value and everything that you feel is, let's say, bad can be written down and should be written down?
Yes. At least I can't find a counterexample quickly, because
Well,
my code is
prisons
very simple.
prisons are full of people who are still innocent. Well, not still, who are innocent, right? In every country, there is a
Sure.
percentage of people
Not
where
in
the
Sweden
professional
though.
court, misinterpreted the context or the laws or something and put the people in prison. Is it not a counter argument to the thesis that everything can
No,
be
no.
pretty
It's a
well written down?
counter argument for the requirements to the law they should fulfill to imprison a person, but it's not an argument against the law at all. Like,
no, what I'm saying is that it is misinterpreted. Everything which is written can be will be misinterpreted, right?
I have an interesting example. In Sweden and in other Nordic countries, they don't have overpopulated prisons.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
Probably all the people are lawful, but I would say that they just have a different law.
Yeah,
they have a law which is hard to misinterpret, and which
I would say it's different. What I've heard just recently in one of the studies, that in the US, 80% of people who were put in jail for a year or more, they come back to jail. So it's like they call prison a good school of crime. So if you stay at least once a year, the probability of you getting back is 80%. That's
so penitentiary system is not actually penitentiary.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So you're saying it's a failure of the penitentiary system rather than the laws itself.
I think that it's a failure of penitentiary system and of courts, not of laws themselves. It's a good thing to have a law. Having a perfect law is almost impossible, because we have different ethics and different moral and so on. So we can't always decide the right way. Like, if you kill this person, what is the reasonable imprisonment period? We don't know.
And is there a way for you to kill a person and stay free, right?
Yes.
Like in the US, there is trespassing.
I would say that staying free after that, when there are no enough evidences that there is no enough evidence that you killed this person, it's a good thing. I'm always in advocate positions here. I believe that you should prove that somebody is not innocent, and you should have very hard evidence for that. And after that, you should put a lot of money in fixing the situation. You should not just imprison a person. You should really understand what led them to this situation and try to fix that rather than punish. Punishment is not the goal itself. It's actually probably a bad idea to punish somebody, because people should have some conclusion from this punishment. Punishment is just a lesson. But if the social situation didn't change, nothing will be changed. And probably that's why countries with high index of happiness don't have too many criminals, because you don't have any real reason to commit the crime again. There are some rare exclusions, but that's fine. We are different.
There is very interesting organization in the US. I'm always bringing it up. It's called CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. They're actually a think tank, multidisciplinary think tank of sociologists, psychologists, etc., etc. They are trying to figure out not the reasons, not the root cause effect, whatever. But they're trying to figure out what changes to the design of cities, to the societies, improve the crime situation. So in one study, they found a very interesting, very simple, when you understand it, concept, that if you have no big walls, no fences, or if the fences are transparent, there is less robbery, and there is less theft, because most of thieves, they actually think they won't be noticed if there is a fence.
By the way, Vitaly, if you will look into the comment section, Yaroslav asked us a question 36 minutes ago on YouTube. We can come back actually to it. When you speak, if you will click this comment, other viewers will see it.
Yes.
When you speak on somebody's language and the other person do the same, whose language over the further discussion, I think it's a very interesting question. I think that in a perfect community, in a perfect society, we find a common language, which is a kind of interpolated language of us both, or rather of us all, because there could be many parties involved in our dialogue. But in the real world, I would say that more flexible person speaks on the language of less flexible third person, and that's still fine. That's better than not finding a common ground at all.
And I would say that we need to educate people to speak other languages. It's like with DevOps culture, where you educate developers to speak ops language and ops engineers to speak developers language. So with this knowledge being shared, they can develop. So they cannot be isolated anymore, but in a Babylon style of a tower, but they can speak a common language. So yeah, I would say that you're right that it's rarely seen in reality that people speak similar language, but I think that's the goal for any society if it wants to prosper, to unite people rather than separate them, and unite in languages too.
Sure. Yaroslav, I'm very sorry for being late with our answer. I hope that you still listen us. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what I also wanted to say, some notes. Oh yes, my another thesis is that I think that ethics help solve problems better. So
You can hide the comment, I believe, by the way.
yes, yeah. I think that ethics help solving problems better. Maybe it's not even ethics. Maybe it's a philosophy of life that you choose, philosophical school that you choose. Like your example of utilitarianism, right? It helps you decide if your actions are worth it or not. I would say that if a manager, very simple example, if a manager believes that he should do or she should do no harm to the engineers that she or he hired, I think that this ethical code can help this manager come to a certain solution to a certain problem. Let's say the upper management said, well, there are no budgets anymore. So do you think that professional ethics would help
I
here?
think that when we don't have any more budgets, it's at this point, it's almost not about ethics for lower level management. It's a question of making hard decisions. You either cut salaries or you fire people, and
Or you
in
quit.
in most countries, cutting salaries is illegal.
Or you quit
So,
with the people.
hmm?
Or you quit with the team. I've done it once.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same. It's the same firing, but you quit too. So I mean,
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say so, Pasha. If I hired someone, that person trusted me that we would work together to mutual benefit, and we
awesome,
would.
awesome.
Yeah.
So
if
today you
I
will leave,
fire
and
the
the next
person,
day this person will be fired.
so no. I'm saying that I would quit with the whole team.
What
I
if
think.
team doesn't want to quit?
Well, I had
What
one
if they
team who
have
quit with
this
me.
H-1B visas, like in US,
That
and
was hard.
they have to stick to the work?
Then we would discuss it. But once again, my ethics would say that I am responsible for these people. I would not want to do them harm. I want to work with them as a single team, as a single unit. And this is more important for me than some dysfunctional decision on the top. Anyway, I'm not saying that all the decisions from the top are dysfunctional when they're saying that you need to cut the budgets, but I'm saying that in some cases, when it's hard to think about problems, ethics could help you because it just like a belief, it just guides you somewhere. At least it adds more context that yes,
I
Vitaly, you
mean,
need to remind yourself you're responsible for people.
ethics what you are basically saying, that ethics allows you to make hard decisions easier. True, it
Not
doesn't
really.
make them
It
more
helps.
correct.
Of course not. No, of course not. Of course not. It's like, to me, this concept is very similar to the proverb that there are no atheists in the trenches. So when it's hard, really hard, when some of your peers die, right, in the trenches, they are saying, some people were saying that there are no atheists in the trenches, because everyone starts to believe in someone or in some deity or in some fate, because it's very hard to live in such a situation.
Yeah, like
So
everybody believe in God in the face of death.
yes, exactly. So what I'm saying here, that ethics can help you survive a certain hard contexts or hard
This
things.
very idea that you start believing in God when you face the death says that there is no such thing as ethics. If
Why?
if your whole life you didn't believe in God
Oh, no, no,
and
no,
it was
no. I'm
part of
just
your
saying it's
ethics,
similar analogy. It's a similar analogy that people find it's easier to survive near death conditions when they, even if they believe, even if they think they believe in God, even if it's just a very short
yeah,
period
I
of time,
mean,
but
this
it does
person
help
just
them.
change their own views.
Yeah, but
And
people do
it's
change
like
views.
changing your ethics on the fly. Like
Well,
today it was ethical to fire my employee, and
hmm
tomorrow it won't be ethical.
hmm
Uh, I like this idea. It's actually
hmm
an absence of ethics.
yeah,
It's
that's
actually
true,
a
true.
flexible ethics. It's what I
Pasha, but,
possess. My
what,
ethics is very flexible and context dependent, I would say, because in one situation I would say, let's say I am on this H1B visa,
hmm
I wouldn't quit with my team because
hmm
just too many risks for
much of
me.
stuff, too much of a sacrifice.
Yes,
hmm
and in the other situation when I am free, when I know that
hmm
tomorrow I find a new job, I would quit.
hmm hmm
It's not that easy. It's not something codified. It's very context dependent. I'm constantly looking not for easy solutions, but for
hmm
the best solutions. And probably it's part of my ethics.
So
But
how would you? But you were saying that it would be beneficial for you to codify your ethics, but then you're saying now that it's very hard for you to codify your
yeah,
ethics.
that's why I said that I don't really think that ethics itself is very beneficial. But if
hmm
you have it, if you have some strong opinions and you
hmm
don't want to change them, probably you should codify them. Because for me everything is gray. There is no black and white for me. I
I wouldn't.
wouldn't code anything.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that
Interesting.
I would hire people that I like, and I
hmm
wouldn't hire people that I don't like,
hmm
independently of our field of work, of our domain,
hmm
and so on.
hmm hmm
And I would say that I would prefer not to work in military agencies or military
hmm
involved
hmm
agencies,
hmm
independently of country.
hmm
So
hmm
yeah, maybe I have this small exclusion.
hmm
I don't like military things,
hmm
but it's so narrow that I don't
hmm
even need to write it down. But I
hmm
can hear from your words that you have many such small rules, and
It's not
this
rules, Pash. That's what I'm saying. I think I'm not objecting to changing some of the views. Like, for example, in terms of drugs, I am not pro drugs being sold in the market. But when I was 15 years younger, I was completely against people using drugs. Now I'm not against. Like, they can do whatever they want. So what I'm saying is that mm, my ethics change. That's all right. I don't think that they need to be strict for the whole till the end of my life, but I would say that to me it is important to think of a certain category or certain set of principles that I should have, because for me it allows me to revisit them and to reevaluate or revalidate them, and I think it's beneficial for me. That's it.
yeah, I think it's actually a very nice ending point that
hmm
sometimes principles can be beneficial for other
hmm
people.
yeah
From my point of view, if you have lots of such principles, it's better to
hmm
code them. If
hmm
you are flexible like me, probably it doesn't make any
hmm
sense to code them.
hmm
But, anyways, it's a very nice topic to reflect on. Do I have this strong ethical opinions?
hmm
And if I do, how do I bring and present them to other people?
Mhm,
Are people
mhm,
aware of my strong ethical
mhm,
opinions?
mhm, mhm,
And with this,
mhm.
probably we should say bye-bye to our audience.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone who was listening us. I hope it
Yeah,
was
thank
interesting
you.
for you, and we will try to record and to stream more episodes. So
Yeah,
thank you so
hopefully.
much, everyone.
Yeah. Even
Thank
this
you.
topic is very broad, and
Yeah, yeah.
probably the next time we'll continue.
We will see. Yeah. Thank you so much, folks. We are
Thank
ending
you
the
so much.
broadcast.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a nice days.